Hey everybody, thanks for joining us again today. Man, I got another great guest. I've got a friend joining me today. His name is Ryan Milan, and Ryan is an expert in insurance. I meet with Ryan quite regularly, and to be honest with you, I've been doing this a long time, and I've found out a lot about insurance that I thought would be worth sharing with all of you guys. So with that said, before we get started, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Let's go ahead and get started. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing today?
Doing well, brother.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Everybody, Ryan. Ryan, everybody.
Great to meet you, everyone.
So, guys, so Ryan, he does a lot of different types of insurance, but specifically for my team, he does home and auto. And Ryan and I meet on a semi-regular basis, and we're just kind of talking about, what's the best way to be able to refer my clients over to Ryan. He asks the same of me, like, what's the best way for me to be able to refer clients over to you? And while I was talking to him, I found out some things that were kind of right there in front of my face, but I didn't really realize it. And I thought, this would make a really great live stream. So with that said, I asked Ryan to do this with me. So one of the things that Ryan, made me aware of that I really didn't think about much before is the majority of people, who buy their insurance online that do not have, an expert insurance person that they specifically deal with are probably not getting the best service. And they're also maybe underinsured or possibly overinsured. And when you think about that for a minute, think about this. If you're around shopping for quote unquote the best rate, there's lots of providers out there that might give you a really great rate. But are you really getting the best rate if you're overinsured or possibly underinsured? So with that said, Ryan, why don't you kind of elaborate what you and I were talking about?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, a lot of people that I run into, probably about 3 and 4 customers that I work with, so 75%, they have never really talked to an insurance expert when they go out and get their home or even their auto insurance. And you definitely do not want to be underinsured. And what can happen, you see the commercials online and say, yeah, we can save you $500 on your home and your car insurance. Yeah, great. They can save you money, but you're going to be sacrificing coverages. And we mentioned it. You're in the mortgage world, Barry, that your home is going to be the most important purchase that you make in your life for 99% of people. You want to make sure that it's covered correctly. You don't want to have that home underinsured in case accidents do happen, storms come through and cause damage. If you don't have your home properly insured and you can't build it back to the specs of how it was before the storm, what's the point of even having insurance?
And I know 100%. I mean, it's happened to me before. Like, I don't know what I mean. I think I know more about insurance now than I did maybe 20 years ago. But I have for sure found out that I was spending too much on my car insurance. First of all, that was when I first noticed it, because they didn't have the right mileage of how much mileage I was putting on one of my cars. One of my cars, I've got a 2014 Camry that has 26,000 miles on it. It never gets driven, but yet the insurance company thought I was putting 10,000 miles a year on it. And so, of course, my insurance was much higher. But, especially when it comes to your home, like, I can tell you one of the big mysteries to most people, and it took me a while to really wrap my head around it, is the idea of a replacement cost. Like, when you get home insurance, the lender wants you to have enough coverage to make sure that your home can be replaced. So why don't you talk about that a little bit, Ryan?
So most people are kind of confused when they get a mortgage. If it's $1 million loan, why is their house not insured to $1 million? And the simple answer to that question is that land is not insurable. So that's when what we do is we run a cost of rebuild calculator. So we put in all the specs of your home, which deal with the current cost of rebuild, everything that it would take to rebuild your house if you had a total loss. We put your information in, and a rating system spits out that exact number. So sometimes it's not going to be equal to the loan amount. And on Barry's end, when the coverage does not meet the loan amount, you have to provide a cost of rebuild calculator to show that the home is 100% insured.
So, interesting point, about how, especially in the last year, right?
Big time.
This supply glut that's out there this is why new builders are not able to build new communities like they were. It's funny. I often will show a client, a presentation that I've done where I talk about some of these headlines where they go, new home sales have gone down, or they're not moving as fast as they were. Maybe the end is near. But when you read in the fine print, they're talking about brand new builds that were down.
Yep.
And it's not because of lack of demand. God knows if you're out there looking for a house right now, I don't know if there's any place in the world where there's a lack of demand. But
I'm going through that right now. There's definitely there's a lack of supply, but definitely no lack of demand.
That's right. So, is there like a formula, Ryan, that insurance companies use where they look at, let's say where the economy's at, the cost of goods. We know inflation is, the inflation numbers are really high. They just came out last week, almost 8%, like 7.9%. Do they calculate that 7.9% inflation into the replacement cost, or is it something that they won't do unless you bring it up to them?
So they do, and then they also have an option to add an inflation guard to your insurance quotes as well. Obviously, right now we're seeing record high in inflation, so it's kind of hard to predict. Usually you'll see about 4% inflation guard on insurance quotes that come over, but right now we're trying to tick those number up closer to 7 or 8 to be relevant with the current economy.
Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you is, with all these natural disasters that are taking place in the new world that we live in California, it's a ton of fires. In the Midwest, it could be tornadoes. It could be, floods. If somebody's having a difficult time getting insured, like I have clients who, they want to buy a home that has been deemed by FEMA to be in a fire zone, even though, the fire might have been, the most recent fire could have been a mile away from them. Somehow or another, they get, it's deemed a fire zone. And then their insurance company tells them, we can't insure you. But then they turn around and they're able to get insurance through a different carrier. Like, is that something that you would consider yourself to be somewhat of a specialist in, is to finding insurance for those people that might otherwise not be able to find it through their traditional sources?
Yes, and that's an advantage of just working with an independent brokerage like my company, is that there might be a State Farm or a USAA, and they might have limited markets and might not want to insure your place if it's in a fire zone or a flood zone. There's a lot of different characteristic traits that go into, are we willing to insure this property or not? And the advantage of working with a brokerage is that I have multiple different options that I can go to. If one carrier tells me no, I just go right on to the next. So that is definitely something that I'm an expert with, and hard to place risk. And your house you need to have insurance on it. So being told that you can't get insurance on a property is obviously going to make you, especially if it's your home that you own, if they say it's not in a good condition, it's going to get you emotional and kind of put a bad taste in your mouth with going through the insurance process. So that's something that I always bring up to clients, is that's just another emphasis on educating your clients, is that if you do a good job educating them up front of what can happen, they're not as mad on the ladder. when things go wrong.
Well, it's funny because for all of you who don't know this, before we do a live stream, you will, get together and we'll go, hey, we've got all these great ideas. Let's put this into some sort of a format and figure out what we're going to talk about. Well, my business development manager, Jackie, is part of this meeting, and she's producing this segment right now. She's in the background. I don't want to embarrass her and bring her out here, but Jackie is an attorney. And at one time, Jackie worked at a company where they sold life insurance, and it was, one of these call center type places. And she brought up a really great point in that, when and I've experienced this myself, where I will call. I used to have my insurance. I won't name the name of the company, but whenever you would call them, it was like it was a roll of the dice. Am I going to get somebody that knows what they're talking about today? Or am I going to get somebody who's going to put me on hold and say, that's a great question, sir. Hold on a second. Let me talk to my supervisor. And then they leave me on the phone for 5 minutes. So you got to remember if you're dealing with one of these companies that, are doing a lot of advertising, and you're calling a toll-free number to get an insurance quote, it's a roll of the dice. Are you getting somebody that actually knows what they're talking about? Or are you getting somebody that, started 3 days ago? So having somebody who, is a licensed insurance agent that really is knee deep in this day in and day out, and they're not just fielding 50, calls an hour, in some call center, I think is a very, very important aspect as to why you should have somebody specific like Ryan. Ryan, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
That was well said. And just to add on it, I know all of us have dealing with a 1-800 number before. It happens. And 99% of the time when you're dealing with a 1-800 number, you end up getting frustrated because you're either on hold, or as you mentioned, you're talking to somebody who has to go talk to their manager to see if that's the right question or not. The advantage of working with an independent brokerage and knowing your agent is you call my cell phone directly, whether if a bad storm comes through and you call me on a Saturday, I'm going to pick up the phone and instruct you either how to submit a claim or answer any questions that you may have when it comes to insurance. And if for whatever reason, I can't get to the phone, I have 3 dedicated account managers that back up my account. So there's always going to be somebody available to answer a call who has industry experience and knows what they're talking about.
Well, and I think the other thing that that everybody should know about you is what a terrific connector you are. Like I got introduced to Ryan through another friend of mine who I'm a client, and she's one of my clients, Dominique Lee. And, she set up a meeting for Ryan and I because, she figured we should know each other, and got to talking to Ryan. And, Ryan's like, oh, you need somebody, you need somebody that's doing this. Is there, what else? Is there some way that I can help you? And it wasn't about lining his pockets. It was about just trying to be of service to me, which was very refreshing. and I was just thrilled. So, knowing Ryan and being a part of his, orbit, there's a good chance that he's going to be able to help you in other ways as well. And I don't want to put any pressure on you, Ryan, but I would imagine that Ryan is local. He's in Nashville, and that's one of the areas that my team is starting to move into. Although he is licensed in many other states, specifically in Nashville. If you're in Nashville or in that area, and you need somebody who can help you with flood damage or whatever it is, I can't imagine that there isn't anybody that you don't know, Ryan. Would you think that's a pretty fair assessment?
Yes, that is. And as you said, and how you run your business, is we're trying to take the transactional feel away from what we do, whether it's insurance, mortgages, you name it. We're trying to make it relationship based. and a goal of just having a team, especially Barry. I know you're trying to grow your market in the state of Tennessee, and there's a lot of people from California moving to the state of Tennessee. You might not know a good mechanic. You might not know a good insurance agent. You might not have a realtor or a mortgage lender. The list goes on and on. And being able to work with somebody who's local and well-connected, you can move into a city and be comfortable that you already have a list of 15 people that can handle things for you when situations pop up.
That's right. And I folks, if I clearly have been around for a little bit. I'm 61 now. I've been doing this for a little over 20 years, and I haven't met anybody quite like Ryan in that respect. Everybody usually talks a good game, but Ryan has already introduced me to two very influential people, and he's just really on it. I just love the way that he just talks about his business in general, because as he pointed out, is very much aligned with our value proposition. You may not know this if you're not one of my clients, but we are not a transactional lender. We're trying to be a partner for life with our clients. Clearly, if you're 35 years old, your time with me may have a finite time, but as you can see, I have a team. My son, Shane, is there to carry on the legacy. So we're always looking for partners like Ryan, and he's just been super helpful. Ryan, let's talk about some of the other types of insurance that you do besides home and auto, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So my main focus is actually in commercial insurance. So basically anything business related I can handle, whether it's errors and omissions for a title attorney, which is something that I just wrote the other day, or putting property coverage on a 2 million square foot warehouse. I can get into the weeds a little bit when it comes to business insurance, so I'll save that conversation for another time. But for me, anything that's property and casualty driven, so home, auto, business, workers' comp, general liability, business auto, umbrella policies, those are all things that I specialize in and am happy to help any either personal connection that comes over or a business referral that comes my way.
Well, and you know what? I think that is a great idea to have a different live stream all about that, because I think that that's an incredible array of things that you do, especially on the commercial end. Finding a really good commercial insurance agent is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
For those of you guys that are looking at Ryan and saying, I've got shirts that are older than Ryan, I can tell you that Ryan is young, but Ryan has a pretty incredible story too. He was a hockey. Would you call yourself professional or amateur? But you went to college. And you
definitely
you
not
were
a professional. And
right?
I did not play in college, but I basically played hockey my entire life, and that brought me to different parts of the country. I moved out of my house when I was about 16 years old. Lived with a different family, got to experience kind of just growing up before most kids get to grow up. And then I also I'm from North Carolina originally, and I moved to Arizona for college. So I've kind of been all over the place and been on my own for a little while. So that just has helped me, I'd say, mature.
One of the things that impressed me about you was, I'm not ageist. If so, then you probably shouldn't be talking to me because you're much younger than I am. But, because you're young, I always like finding out like the history of whoever I'm talking to. And Ryan has been, very, he is a gregarious and adventure. He has an adventurous spirit. Yeah, sure. I'm gonna go to a different state and figure things out as I go along. I just love that about him, and I think it's worth noting like what led you into why you really love insurance, Ryan.
Yeah. And just the simple thing about insurance is being able to help people. As I mentioned earlier, not a lot of people know the coverages that they're buying, and a lot of people have been burned when a claim does happen that they don't have it covered. And then my dad actually owned a small company growing up. And I got to see how hard he worked to, one, keep his company going and put food on other people's plates, but then also put a roof over my head. And that there's so much work that goes involved with building up just your career and the things that you own and your family, that you want to make sure it's protected correctly. And that just really interests me, especially working on the business insurance side, that, yeah, you've built a company from the ground up, but one tornado can change things. And I want to make sure that you have the proper coverage in place so that you don't have to worry about having a tornado roll through and causing damage to your building, that you're insured properly. We can build you back and you can be right back off from where you started. You get to focus on what you're good at and let me focus on the insurance side of things.
That's awesome. Well, I think that put a bow in it. And I appreciate you doing this with me, Ryan. I hope that if any of you out there, if this resonated at all with you, or if you just need a connection like Ryan, that you reach out to him. His contact information is scrolling down there below. If you're watching this on social media, also put a comment in there, and I'm sure Ryan will be happy to respond to you. If you are watching this, again, not to beat a dead horse, I don't want to say it, not to peel a banana again. That's a terrible saying, the old one that I almost said. Not to peel a banana again, but please like, subscribe, hit that bell. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. Have an incredible year. And thank you again, Ryan, for doing this with us, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching. Really enjoyed this time. Thank you again, Barry.
No problem. See you, everybody.